It is now impossible to tell the difference between Donald Trump and John Kelly. They are only a few years apart in age, and they both grew up in northeastern urban racist neighborhoods. Donald Trump in Queens and New York City, John Kelly in Brighton and Boston. They both grew up in what was still the Neanderthal age of America's treatment of women. They both grew up in a country where you could still be murdered for being a black person trying to register to vote, or being a white person trying to help a black person trying to register to vote. And there is no evidence that Donald Trump or John Kelly ever objected to any of that. There is no evidence that they ever protested anything about the world they were born into. And today, thanks to BuzzFeed's Freedom of Information Act request, we now see John Kelly's email about Senator Elizabeth Warren in the early days of the Trump administration, in which he tells one of his assistants that Senator Elizabeth Warren is an, quote, impolite, arrogant woman, end quote, because she called John Kelly when he was Secretary of Homeland Security and complained to him that the Trump administration was illegally not following the court orders that federal judges in Massachusetts and New York issued to block the Trump Muslim ban that was unconstitutional and illegally implemented. John Kelly knew with confidence that he could tell the man working for him that Elizabeth Warren was an impolite, arrogant woman, and that man would understand exactly what he meant, because that man was Kevin Carroll, an Irish-American with the same views of women that John Kelly and Donald Trump have. John Kelly and Kevin Carroll's Irish ancestors came to this country in poverty and starving, and were welcomed in places like the Port of Boston, which Elizabeth Warren was fighting to preserve as an entry point for deserving immigrants. But their Irish heritage had no effect on John Kelly and Kevin Carroll's view of the immigrants who were trying to enter in those same places where their ancestors entered. John Kelly is the White House official whose public conduct is as despicable as Donald Trump's. Not as frequently despicable, but despicable enough. He is the man who called an African-American congresswoman an empty barrel and accused her of lying. And when that was instantly proven false, when John Kelly was instantly proved to be the liar about Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, John Kelly refused to apologize. He held that ground that the old racist neighborhood that he grew up in would have been so proud of. John Kelly's old neighborhood has changed a lot since he lived there. It is now integrated. It has a lot less racism than it used to, but we don't know how much John Kelly has changed, if at all, since he lived there. When John Kelly was exposed to the world as a liar about an African-American congresswoman, of course he wouldn't apologize. He wouldn't apologize to an African-American woman for anything, including lying about her and calling her a dehumanizing term. And so there is no real news in John Kelly's women problem. He is the man who told the lie that women were held sacred when he was growing up, and he knew that was a lie when he said it, and he knew it was a lie when he was a child and experienced the truth. He saw the way women were actually held down in those days in so many ways, not just in his neighborhood, but in the entire country. Denied employment simply because they were women. Entire categories of employment were shut off to women when John Kelly tells the lie that they were held sacred. Kevin Carroll, the apparently soulless flunky who received John Kelly's email about Elizabeth Warren being an impolite, arrogant woman, replied, "Too bad Senate Majority Leader McConnell couldn't order her to be quiet again!" Exclamation point. Warren is running for president so early, trying too hard and chasing bad pitches. That email is from a flunky who works for Donald Trump, who started running for re-election for president and fundraising for re-election the day after inauguration. Order her to be quiet again. That's what John Kelly's flunky wanted Mitch McConnell to do to Elizabeth Warren, not realizing that when Mitch McConnell tried to do that to Elizabeth Warren on the Senate floor, he made Elizabeth Warren a political folk hero for anyone who does not worship at the altar of Trump.
I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President.
The senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate, I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object.
I appeal the ruling.
Objection is heard. The senator will take her seat.
And here is how the cowardly lion of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, later described that moment.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
And with that, nevertheless, she persisted, became a unifying cry for Elizabeth Warren and against Mitch McConnell and against Donald Trump and against the likes of his flunkies and everyone else who thinks that a woman raising her voice for justice for immigrants is an impolite, arrogant woman. John Kelly had many Trump team flunkies working for him at the Department of Homeland Security, and he has many Trump team flunkies working around him in the White House now. But John Kelly surely is Donald Trump's flunky in chief. Olivia Nuzzi reports that in the middle of an Oval Office interview with Donald Trump, Trump turned to John Kelly and said, "General, what do you think of the president?" he asked. "He's a great president," Kelly said. John Kelly is Donald Trump. After this break, Ruth Marcus and Aisha Moody Mills will join us with their take on John Kelly's view of that impolite, arrogant woman.
Tonight on Fallon.
Today, guys, President Trump met with Kanye West at the White House. Incredible.